try to be like somebody else too. You know, I think most people, get jealous of somebody and try to emulate them, and then you give it up, and maybe it costs you a little bit wasted time. But here it's really sharp because this costs. There's a level where it can cost your demise. We're trying to step into a voltage level that's not your system is not made for. Can actually be your undoing. Good morning, Reb Eli.
Good morning.
And good day to everybody out there in cyberspace yeshiva. We are with Parshat Korah today, and so again, for those of you who want to have the text in Hebrew in front of you, it's going to be pasted. The tour, the instructions of how to find it on sefaria.org is going to be pasted at the end of the YouTube video, so you can go all the way to the end, follow the instructions, follow your page on sefaria.org, and then listen to the video with the text in front of you.
So here's a little joke that some of you might have heard before. A guy walks into the rabbi, has a meeting with the rabbi. He's never been in shul before. Doesn't seem outwardly like a particularly religious guy, but somehow he wants a meeting with the rabbi. He sits down with the rabbi. What can I do for you, says the rabbi. He says, Rabbi, I want you to make me a kohen. I want you to make me one of the priestly class. So what do you mean? You want me to make you a kohen? Doesn't work like that. He thinks it's a joke. He says, no, I saw that a kohen gets this honor, a kohen gets that honor. I want to be a kohen. So he tries to explain. He says that's not the way it works, blah, 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 blah. He says, Rabbi, listen, I understand. I'm willing to make a very high donation to the synagogue. Just come on, make me a kohen. He says, okay, now you're insulting me a little bit, but I can't do that. I'm sorry. He says, I'm just curious. Why do you want to be a kohen so badly? He says, well, my father was a kohen. My grandfather was a kohen. I want to also be a kohen. Anyway, this week we have a guy who really wanted to be a kohen. He was Moshe Rabbeinu's. He was Moses' cousin. His name was Korah.
Yeah.
And he really wanted to be a kohen. And unfortunately, we don't have the time to go into this really interesting psychological battle that was happening here. But what happens is he starts a mini rebellion against the leadership of Moses and his brother Aaron, who had been appointed to be the Kohen, the priest.
Literally an insurrection.
An insurrection. Now, considering that there were between 2 to 3 million Jews in the desert and about 600,000 adult men, only 250 people actually were involved. But the Torah makes a big deal about it because it was an assault on the leadership and the divine inspiration behind what was going on with the Jewish people at that time. So it was a really serious and big deal. Moshe Rabbeinu was a man of peace. He tried to make peace. It didn't work. In the end, Korah and his followers were punished with a very unusual and unique punishment. They were swallowed up by the earth. There's a lot of interesting stories here, which we're going to skip. The basic line, which the Sfas Emes here is going to take off on, is what was the core problem that was going on between what Korah wanted and but was unable to attain. Right. And that's the story in Reader's Digest form. The Medrash is going to quote, I'll just tell you what the quote is to put it in context. When Moshe has an argument with this fellow, with his cousin Korah, Moshe says, listen, Baiker v'yoda, wait until the morning. In the morning, God will make it known. We'll have a test. You will offer some incense, and the Kohen, my brother, will offer some incense, and the one whose incense is accepted as an offering, he's the priest, obviously.
Yeah.
But he said, in the morning it will become known. In the morning. And based on these two words, the Sfas Emes is going to quote a beautiful medrash and explain some very interesting lessons for us about belonging, identity,
boundaries.
and roles.
Briefly, shortly add to that it's. I think the Sfas Emes is also answering the question that a lot of people ask: is Korah is making a good argument? He's making an argument for equality and democracy, right? So in some ways, what Korah is saying resonates with us, especially because we live in a democratic society. And I think what the sages are explaining here is kind of the basic conceptual framing that shows why there's a place for everything and a time for everything. And Korah, is basically not able to see that or ignoring that. And
Right.
and he makes a strong case for there's order in the universe and there's order in the spiritual universe. So
Right. And the bottom line that we're going to see, the question that you're raising and that Korah is raising, is, does equality equal sameness?
Uva midrash boker, uva midrash, and in the midrash they discuss the quote boker veyodea. It's in this is a quote from the Chumash where Moshe says, as you just explained, in the morning God will let us know what's right and what's wrong as a response to Korach's. So we don't have time to get into the midrash, but the point of the midrash is what the Sfat Emes offers next: Gevulot Chalak HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that there are boundaries. Everything has its place. The world is constructed. The Creator creates the world with a time and a place and boundaries and limits and everything. And now let's explore that. So, פירוש, כמו שיש בזמן ממשלת היום והלילה, ולכל דבר גבול ומקום מיוחד. Meaning that just as in the realm of time, we have the time when day dominates, and there's a time where night dominates, and everything has its time and its place that's unique to it. That's an example of boundaries. Chen hu b'nefashot, and it's the same things with souls. Kedichtiv marabu ma'asecha Hashem, as it's written in the Psalms, how great are your creations, God. Darash Rabbi Akiva, and this is from the Gemara, יש לך בריאות גדלות בים, ואין יכולים להתקיים ביבשה. So as Rabbi Akiva taught, there are creatures that are that grow or live, you could say, in the sea, and they cannot actually live on land, like fish. והגדלות ביבשה אינם יכולים להתקיים בים, and there are creatures that grow on land that cannot remain alive, cannot sustain themselves in underwater. חייו של זה, מיתתו של זה. The life of one is the death of the other. Ayen Sham, says Rabbi Akiva. So here he brings the Gemara that makes it even more severe. It's not that everything has boundaries and a place, but for some, their demise is in a place that's not theirs, right? So there's mitato chayav shel zeh. What sustains the life of one kills the other. So that's, I think he makes it very sharp. Yeah.
Yeah, and Marabu, how manifold are your creations? How, in other words, the idea of Gvulot, that everyone is unique. That's what he's saying. That it doesn't say unashama on the Assisi.
I
I
see.
have made a soul. I have made neshamot. I have made souls. Everybody is different. Everybody's unique,
Right.
as they were created by God. And
Understood.
and this is the foundation upon which we're going to understand Kairach's error.
Hmm. Interesting. And I never read Ravu as manifold. That's a chiddush for me. So it means diversity. It's not
Right.
like how great are your creations, but how diverse are your creations, and everything is different. Everything has its own role. Thank you for that. Okay. וכן הוא בנשמות שנקראו מעשה ידיו של הקדוש ברוך הוא. And so it is, that principle applies to the souls that are dafka, the creation of the Holy One, blessed be. Um, so this is what is to say that this is ordained. This is by God's plan that the neshamot are all unique. Dichtiv v'neshamot ani asiti, as it says, I think in Isaiah, and souls I have created. Okay. ויש לכל נשמה גבול ומקום מיוחד. Thus, every neshama, every soul has a place and a boundaried place, a specific place that's unique to it. ולכן, קנאת קורח אבדתו מן העולם. And this is why the jealousy of Korah, the Korach's jealousy of Moshe and Aaron, the fact that he wanted to be them, right? Because what is Korach's claim? Korach's claim is why should you lead? Why not us? Why not anybody? You know, what makes you so special, right? That's what Korach is saying. And this kind of you could say envy is Korach's demise.
Right. And it's really interesting because, Kairach wasn't a schlepper. He was not just a stomach guy. He was a Levi because he's his cousin. He came from a very important family, and his job within the Levium was to carry the Aron, the Luchos,
Tablets.
the tablets, thank you, with the Ten Commandments. So he had a really important job, and we learned last week that the Levium, their whole thing was singing and dealing with time, etc. So, and this was his thing. This was what he was naturally talented at because that's his soul. His soul calling was to be a Levi.
Yeah.
But what bothers him is that I don't care what I'm doing, no matter how important that might be and how in line with my soul powers that might be. It just bothers me that guy's doing that. Why can't I do that?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. And he rightly calls it based in the bad midah of kina, of jealousy.
Yeah. I remember when I was a child, I remember this story that I don't know its source. I don't think it's from Torah, but I say shared quickly. It goes like this: you say the question is, I think it's a folksy legend. Why does the crow hop like awkwardly? You see the crow; it kind of jumps when you see it walking around. It kind of jumps very clumsily and awkwardly, right? So the story goes like this: the crow, once upon a time, used to walk like a crow, but it got really jealous of the pigeon because the pigeon was very elegant and just walked very sort of like in a royal kind of way. And the crow said, "I want to walk like the pigeon." So it worked for hours and days, and trying to master the pigeon elegance. And finally, after lots of attempts, it realized that it couldn't. But at that time, it forgot how it used to be. So it stayed sort of like limping and jumping in an awkward way. So
Yeah,
So
very good. I never heard that before.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, it's one of those little mices, that I heard as a child. It's like a
Yeah,
folksy thing.
yeah.
But the thing is, I think the beauty of what the way Rabbi Akiva and obviously the Sfat Emet here is, often, I mean, I've tried to be like somebody else too, you know. I think most people, get jealous of somebody and try to emulate them, and then you give it up, and maybe it costs you a little bit of wasted time. But here it's really sharp because this costs. There's a level where it can cost your demise. We're trying to step into a voltage level that your system is not made for. Can actually be your undoing. So, Achen Moshe Rabbeinu alav hashalom ואהרון היו בחינת כללות בני ישראל, כמו שכתוב, כולם בחוכמה עשית. So, and really we see that, so we were talking about Korah. Now let's look at the side of Moshe and Aaron. Well, what's their piece in this, right? So, and he says, the Sfat Emet, yes, it is such that Moses and Aaron, they were in the aspect of the generality of the people of Israel. In other words, they weren't one another unique piece in that puzzle, but they were the puzzle. They were at a meta level, right? They sort of inside their souls, they included all the people of Israel. So in some ways, it's comparing apples and oranges, right? Korah is thinking from the level of we're all a people and everybody is equal, and he kind of flattens everything out, including you. But their neshamot are a different category, a different order of neshama. And they're sort of like I think about what do you call it, the babushka dolls, or as it,
Right.
right? So Korach is inside the doll, but they include all the pieces, right? This is, you can imagine that. I think the puzzle analogy was a better analogy, right?
It's a very good analogy because Kairach was a certain shaped piece of puzzle, but he wanted to fit into another part of the puzzle. And it's not good, sometimes you have it almost goes and you try and make it go.
That's right. That's right.
And it doesn't go.
That's right. That's right. Well, but I think he's actually saying, I want to be the entire puzzle. But one piece cannot be the entire puzzle. You can't replace Aaron and Moshe, is what I'm saying?
Yes,
that's what Chlalut Israel. They're not just another piece. They're not like the top piece, top center, There's Moses, there's Aaron. Look, they're the big top pieces and they rule over everybody else. No, they float above the puzzle. They are the zeitgeist of the puzzle, you can say, right?
Very good. That's it.
Yeah. It's a different order of magnitude there. So I think you got to kind of grok that, got to get that to understand why Korah couldn't equal with them. There's a different role. There's those of us who are neshama klalit, not those of us, but there's those who are neshama klalit. They embrace, their neshama that almost reflects a collective, and not everybody has that. I mean, the great rebbes, you get that sense, somebody who just
right.
there's something
working on a different level.
On a different level, right? Yeah, thank you. It's hard to express in words. Yeah. But that's Moshe and Aaron, right?
Right. You see that in every profession, in every aspect of life. You see certain people I know in music. There are decent guitarists, there are great guitarists, and then there are a handful that everyone in the world acknowledges and understands. These guys were on a whole different level, they say.
Yeah.
Like no one can come close. They can maybe have the proficiency. They can be as fast or faster. But there's something supernatural or super rational about their. It wasn't just talent. It was something else. It was their whole thing. And that's what we're saying here. There are certain individuals that just are born
Right.
on a different level.
Their soul structure is not meant for the ordinary level. Their soul structure is meant for a different level. I think that's a principle that it's hard to wrap one's mind around, but it's important to acknowledge, and then once you get it, it really explains that phenomenon that you're saying. You know, that sometimes you meet somebody who their soul structure is just different.
Right.
That's their gift from Hashem.
Right.
So continue. As this is written, you have created all in wisdom. Shehu Torah, which is the Torah. Shekolelet kol nefashot bnei Yisrael. So the Torah is the model, you could say, for this principle, because all the souls of Israel are included in the Torah.
Right. And Moshe Rabbeinu, who represents Torah.
Yeah.
So the Torah itself and Moshe Rabbeinu are similar in that they all include everybody else.
Right. He's called, well, we'll see in a moment, he says Sar HaTorah. But obviously, Moshe Rabbeinu is the channeler of the Torah, right? You could say he's the Torah because the Torah comes to us through him, right? Through his being. So one way to think about it. בחוכמה עשית שהוא התורה שכוללת כל נפשות בני ישראל ויש לכל אחד חלק בתורה. So each neshama of Israel has a piece in the Torah. They say that everybody has their own letter in the Torah. I mean, I've heard that said, and it's a sweet way to think about it. ומצד התורה מתאחדים כל נפשות בני ישראל. And from the perspective of Torah, all the souls of Israel unite into one bigger soul. Moshe Katav, Keilat Yaakov.
That's a pasuk in V'zayis Bracha. Torah Tzivalan Moshe Morasha Kehilat Yaakov. It's the Torah is the inheritance of the congregation of Jacob, of Yaakov, and he'll explain why Yaakov. Why is the Torah specifically an inheritance of the children of Yaakov? Why not Abraham or Yitzchak?
I see.
Which he'll get into.
So שהתורה למעלה מגן גבולים, so he says that the Torah is above the boundaries and the construct of ordinary life. And this is just like we just said that Moshe and Aaron are above the boundaries and the construct of ordinary life. The Torah itself is above that construct or that plane. ומעין זה, בזמן שבת קודש, שהוא למעלה מן הזמן, and the same principle applies to the Holy Shabbat, which is also above the construct or limitations of time. ונקרא נחלה בלי מצרים. And that's why Shabbat is called an inheritance that has no boundaries.
Right, and this gets back to Yaakov. He's explaining about Yaakov because the Gemara says that anyone who is joyful with Shabbos, he inherits a gift without boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And it quotes this pasuk, Torah Tzivalan Moshe, Morasha kills Yaakov. Why Yaakov? And the Gemara goes on to explain that Abraham was promised the land of Israel, but the verses around that promise cite borders.
Mm-hmm.
Yitzchak was promised the land of Israel, but when he was promised the land of Israel by God, the verses over there cite borders.
I see.
When Yaakov was promised the land of Israel, it says, Ufaratzta, Yamov, Akeim, Tzafayim, V'negba. You will spread out in this whole land in every direction, every which
Right.
way. That was an inheritance without boundaries.
Yeah.
So that's why the song on Shabbos says that Shabbos is the same thing. It's above time,
Yeah.
and the land of Israel being above space.
Shalom Shemo Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Peace. Shalom is one of the names of the Holy One, blessed be. Uchtiv Hashem Ozla Moiten Hashem Yivarech Tamo B'Shalom. So this is a pasuk from Psalms, Tehillim, and now he shows us what's the meaning. Okay, so Ozla Moiten, God will give His people power. Zeh B'chinat Moshe Rabbeinu Alav Hashalom Sar Torah. This comes to represent Moses, who is the master of Torah, right? The ultimate master of Torah. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. Ein Oz Elat Torah. That's
Right.
what the sages say on this verse. Ein Oz Elat Torah. When it says Oz, strength, the
That
real
means-
strength is Torah's strength, and Moshe is the giver of the Torah.
That's
So
right.
that first half goes on Torah.
Right. And then Yivarech et Amo B'Shalom. The next half of the verse is the aspect, Bechinat Aharon, the aspect of Aharon. Vehem lemala min hapratim. And that shows that both Moshe and Aaron are above, they're raised above the details, the disparate pieces on the ordinary plane. וקורח אמר, ומדוע תתנשאו על קהל השם? And Korach's claim to them, he said to them, why do you elevate yourself above the godly community, God's community? Aval, so Sfat Emet says, so why was he wrong? Aval באמת, הקדוש ברוך הוא הרים אותם למעלה. So, but God has elevated them above the details, the parts of the ordinary construct of the community.
Yeah, this is a wonderful lesson in unity within diversity. People talk a lot about diversity, but often it becomes a trigger for separateness.
Yeah.
And conflict.
It doesn't have to be, is what.
And it doesn't have to be, and it's essentially not. That's not what diversity is. God specifically made a unified world full of diversity.
Yeah.
But if we look at each other as separate and apart, and we don't see the bigger picture, like Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron the Kohen, seeing the unity of God, of godliness within every aspect of diversity.
Yeah.
So that's also a mistake. Not recognizing the diversity is a mistake.
Yeah.
Not acknowledging the equal holiness of all living creatures, of all things in this world and all people, that's a mistake. But to look at each thing and say, I'm separate and apart from you, and you're separate and apart from me, and then we get into all these sorts of nonsense, that's also wrong.
That's right. And then add to that is to not recognize that some people actually are gifted to represent or to pull together all that diversity into some intended harmony. So, with that, this is a good place to conclude.
We'll take it out with a soft niggin.
Absolutely.
La 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 la.
Beautiful. Love that one.
La 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 la. La 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 la. Here we go, everybody, come on. La 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 la.
you, Rebelli. Everybody have a wonderful day. Please subscribe if you haven't. Subscribe if you haven't, and like if you're in a good mood and appreciative and liking this moment. If not, do not like. Absolutely, just like if you mean it. Let's continue the conversation. Leave your comments below, and please come back next Wednesday for more. Shalom for now. So you're going to sefaria.org. You're going to click the three bars on the top left, which is going to take you to the Sefaria library itself. You're going to scroll down, and in the section titled Texts, you're going to go to the bottom right and click on More, and then go a little bit down to the left. You'll click on Chassidut. And once you're in Chassidut, you're going to scroll down looking for the title Other Chassidut Texts, and keep scrolling down, and Sfat Emet is right here on the right. You click on Sfat Emet, and now we need to go navigate Sfat Emet. You're going to click on the drop-down menu next to the title of the page that says Sfat Emet Genesis Bereshit 1. And scroll down a little bit to the table of contents. You're going to click on the book of Numbers. Once that is open, you're going to scroll down and click on Parshat Korah. And when in Parshat Korah, you're going to click on section number 28. In section 28, which is also marked as Taf Reish Samech Gimel, you're going to scroll down to the second paragraph, and it's actually marked by the little number 3. And it starts, Uba Midrash Boker V'yodea Gevulot.